The United States has released visuals of the first 24 hours of Operation Epic Fury. The visuals have been shared by the U.S. Central Command in a post on X, and the video shows U.S. fighter jets taking off from an aircraft carrier and missiles being fired at targets across Iran. Take a look. And to unpack what's happening and what's to come next, joining us live from London is Jane Kinnan-Mont. She's the CEO, United Nations Association of UK. Thank you so much, Jane, for joining us on the broadcast.
Hello, good to be here.
Jane, Khamenei's death in such violent circumstances heralds an uncertain future, both in Iran and also the wider region. And given that he has kept a firm grip on levers of power in Iran, questions have quickly turned to his successor and whether a change at the top could also signal an ideological shift perhaps in the direction of the Islamic Republic. Well, having said that, what immediate constitutional process do you think would be triggered inside Iran, and how stable is that transition likely to be?
Well, Iran has been expecting for quite some time that Ayatollah Khamenei might be targeted. They've been looking at the succession issue for a long time, also because he was 86 and not in great health. So they do have a process underway. They have now the Speaker of Parliament announcing transition planning, but it is a moment of great vulnerability nonetheless, as they make the transition to another leadership. And also, as Iran has obviously been attacked twice in the last 12 months, both by the US and Israel, its network of non-state actors in the region, such as Hezbollah, have all but collapsed, and it has faced so many domestic protests. So right now, there will be tensions inside the ruling establishment about what way to go. Do they try to cut a deal with the US? My guess is probably not, but some might want to. Do they actually reach out and reset the social contract with the population? That might be desirable, but maybe it's wishful thinking. Do we get new hardliners who are less religious and more military in their thinking from the Revolutionary Guard? There are a number of different ways that this could play out.
Right, and Jane, we are getting, the latest visuals from the Israeli Air Force, which had shared videos of the attack on Iran. And according to the Israeli Air Force, over 1,200 munitions were dropped by Israeli jets on targets in Iran. And these are the visuals that you can see on your screen, the video that's been shared by the Israeli Air Force, where according to the Air Force, over 1,200 munitions were dropped by Israeli jets on targets in Iran.
Yes, a huge number of missiles are being fired in all directions. And according to data released by the Gulf states, it seems that Iran is actually raining more missiles on Gulf countries than it is managing to hit Israel with. Iran's defensive capabilities were severely damaged during the war that took place last June. And probably one reason why this larger war is happening now is that the US and Israel didn't want to give Iran time to build up its air defenses. So it seems Iran's ability to retaliate against Israel is limited, and therefore it is lashing out against Saudi Arabia, UAE, apparently this morning, even Oman, which was at the forefront of mediation. Iran may be betting that these countries will help to calm the situation down. But of course, it's illegal for them to be attacking civilian targets in neighboring states who did not start this war. And it will leave Iran more isolated in the medium to long term if there isn't a change of government, because places like Dubai are not going to forgive what we've seen over the last 24 hours easily.
Right, and circling back to the question of succession. Now, Jane, do you anticipate a smooth succession process in Iran, or do you think this could open the door to more power struggles within the regime itself?
In a way, I think it's both. I think that in the coming days, the regime is likely to manage a smooth succession because it has been expecting that something like this could happen. And while it is under foreign attack, I think that the key people within the ruling establishment will come together and will hold together. But in the weeks and months to come, there will certainly be power struggles. There will be a blame game internally about how this could happen. Why did Iran miscalculate so greatly by essentially setting itself at odds with a much stronger military power in Israel, by miscalculating the chances for diplomacy with the US and for cracking down so much on its own domestic protests? There will be recriminations, which we won't be able to really see from the outside, but it's very likely that within the system there'll be a lot of disagreement about whether to double down on where they stand on, the anti-Western, anti-Israel resistance, or whether they need to adjust and recalibrate for their own protection.
Right, and how much of an influence will the Revolutionary Guard have in the transition? Because we understand that taking out that symbolic figure doesn't necessarily mean that the ideological apparatus is also eradicated from the region. How do we anticipate that panning out?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the Revolutionary Guards are the key players ultimately because they are the most in control of the levers of force. And already people who follow Iran have been arguing for some time that the system was becoming kind of more militarized and less driven by the religious theology. People have different views on that, but I think it is likely they'll agree on a new supreme leader. He may well be a weaker supreme leader, and we may well have a more kind of military Republican style of thinking with a Revolutionary Guard dominated system. At the same time, this is just one of many scenarios. There is also the chance that the regime could collapse or that the state could collapse. But I think it's likely the Revolutionary Guards will be trying to assert control with a kind of fig leaf of religious leadership at the top.
Of course, there would have been contingency plans in place for a situation like this, especially after what happened in June last year. Now, if there is a leadership transition, perhaps, do you think it would create space for renewed nuclear diplomacy?
It's very tough because, of course, Iran was engaged in nuclear talks mediated by Oman, among others, when these attacks happened. That's the second time this has happened. They were also engaged in talks with the US when they were bombed last year. So I think most Iranian decision makers are going to say, what's in it for us, to talk about the nuclear program. However, there could potentially be some larger efforts to broker a ceasefire in which Iran would probably see nuclear issues as leverage. There is still a question about quite a large amount of highly enriched uranium which is in Iran, and nobody actually knows where it is. Well, some people know where it is, but internationally no one knows where it is. And Iran may try to use that as a bargaining chip if it does try to get a ceasefire in the next few days.
Of course, Jay, now for the region and the world, the implications are significant. And more than the event itself, the coming weeks perhaps will determine whether Iran enters a period of consolidation or instability. But of course, we'll have to wait and watch how the situation evolves from here. But for now, thanks, Jane, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your insights with us.